everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and welcome to Political Jazz at Oliver McGee. Each week we dive into D.C. politics and speak directly to former White House senior advisor Oliver McGee. Oliver, the whole country's abuzz. Donald Trump gave his first talk to the American people from the Oval Office about immigration, laid out the facts. Tell me, was it a success? What did you think of Donald Trump's presentation yesterday?
Very presidential. Wonderful that he's in the Oval Office. You know, it's really nice to see presidents sitting behind that wonderful desk from the Oval Office with the two flags behind him, the family portraits, but his hands are clasped and he's looking extremely presidential. And that is what is driving the Democratic leadership nuts, deranged, crazy. He said one thing that got everybody's attention. You know, this decision could be done in a 45-minute meeting. They had that 45-minute meeting. It lasted 10 minutes, folks, 10 minutes. Nancy and Chuck walked out. They said no. But really, they walked away from the table, and Donald Trump walked out, actually, leaving them at the table. Basically, they said Nancy is not giving not one more dollar for the wall, and she's only offered $1 when Donald Trump is offering $5.7 billion last night. As he laid out the case to the American people, it is very, very convincing when a president sits in the Oval Office, gives an 8-minute address, succinct and simple, filled with facts, authority, and saying, you've got 45 minutes tomorrow to come to a deal. And I'm coming to that meeting, and let's strike a deal and open the government. And then there's no deal.
We'll talk a little bit about the facts. I mean, the left is screaming and caterwauling. Even before Donald Trump opened his mouth, the left was arguing that his facts were all lies. Talk about, to you, what struck you as the most salient information, the most unassailable information that Donald Trump shared with the American people about illegal immigration yesterday?
The overarching thing he said is that he is a national security instrument. His job as the national security authority, he has a right to secure the border. He also brought up the point that he's not that too far off of what Democrats have been saying for decades, in agreement with Donald Trump. My two top tweets that are pinned show Barack Obama, and everyone on Twitter sees Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer agreeing with the president on immigration. So everybody knows that both sides of the aisle want border security, but they just don't want it because it's Donald Trump. They don't want to give him that promises made, promises kept. And that is silly. That's nonsense. You can't just simply be deranged and mad at the president and then basically not secure the country. That's not going to work.
These Democrats just within the last decade were all saying what Donald Trump's saying, and now they're not, and the media's not holding them accountable for it. What did you think of the media's reaction to what Donald Trump said? What did you think about the pundits' just almost hysterical lack of control in dealing with what Donald Trump was saying?
Well, the media is basically showing theater. The key word that you said about the media is reaction. That's all they do. They react. They are essentially the fourth state, and they are to react to what the other three states do. And if the other two states, that is the legislature and the executive, can't agree, the media has perfect theater. And that's all they're going to do. They're going to take sides, mostly on the left, not very few on the right, and they're going to go in and push Nancy in her very strong, radicalized base that says, give $1 for the border wall, because this is what they want. This is what they want. They don't want the commercials to come in at 2020 and have Donald Trump to have his Morning in America commercial like Reagan had in 1984 and have a helicopter, visual cameras going over this big, beautiful wall that has been built on the southern border in the last 2 years. He'll just simply say, it's Morning in America. Why? Because it's promises made, promises kept, brought to you by Donald Trump.
Now, we would be remiss if I let you go without a comment on Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Even the people on the left, even people like James Carville, a lot of leftist figures are just roasting them. They look like two, basically, Weekend at Bernie's corpses animated there. They looked low energy. They looked lost deer in the headlights. Whether or not you agree with the stupid rhetoric they were spouting, it seems like they didn't do themselves any favor. What was your take on Chuck and Nancy's response?
Well, you know, Reagan was a great communicator. Donald Trump is a great media innovator. Chuck and Nancy are just a couple of farmers on the stage trying to figure out how to keep up with the staging. It was bad staging to have a podium that is too small for both of them, and they're crunched in together to look like they're hugging and united, and it was fodder on Twitter. There's so many pictures going viral showing them next to the farmers of Norman Rockwell that it is ironic how close they look. And so the messaging was lost because the staging was bad. And how do you compete with the staging of the Oval Office when Donald Trump is being just presidential? No jokes. He wasn't on his campaign trails. He wasn't calling any names. He was just simply laying out the facts of the Department of Homeland Security and being presidential, 45th presidential. This is what it's all about. I tweeted in the weekend that this would be great if he did an Oval Office address. I put it right out there when I was talking about the stuff that I did on Al Jazeera. And then all of a sudden he comes up with a great idea. He's going to do an Oval Office address. And then guess what? We're moving right into the State of the Union address. You better be careful, Democrats. He may just call a national emergency at the State of the Union.
We're deep into this government shutdown now. Just your thoughts. I think you've given us a hint of what you think. How does this end and how soon does it end?
It's going to end because they're going to get a budget. It may be a little bit dramatic, frisky, but it's a great show. We're all going to watch it. Donald Trump's on the right side. Why? Because it's all going to be about taxes, trade, and transportation. We may possibly, after we get everybody to heal on this, because this is right now our Brett Kavanaugh story right now in this shutdown. It will end like Brett Kavanaugh got on the Supreme Court and that ended. But we may come together and get a middle class tax cut. In trade, we're going to get a China deal. They're coming together on that now. And it's going to be a sweet deal. It's going to be a big handle on intellectual property rights and other types of goodies associated with China. China's coming to the table because they're going to a 3, 4, 5% growth model. We're going to a 3, 4, 5% growth model. So we want to unite with the biggest economy in the world on intellectual property rights and other good trade duties. And that is exactly what Donald Trump promises made, promises kept. The third thing, when they heal from this fight, we're going to get to the business of transportation infrastructure. We got to build a nation's crumbling infrastructure, America. We've got to do it now. And this is where Donald Trump is going to take the win on this and move the Congress in that direction. Why? Because after a year, Nancy and Chuck are going to be desperate to get something done or they won't get elected in 2020.
Oliver, always a great pleasure to speak with you, my friend. Thanks for your insights, and we will see you next time on Political Jazz.